shalom, two different expressions of shalom. Okay, now we said that we were going to start, now at the beginning of Hay, we did say that there's two different, what are these two different levels of shalom? There's a level in which the lower level is bottle, and there's the level in which, the Rabbi doesn't use these words, but he's going to, which the lower level is mizdakech, it's elevated, it's purified, it's illuminated. Okay? So there's a level of bittul and a level of zikuch. If the or comes from above, an or milamaila will be mavatal the lamata. It will do away with the existence of the lower realm. If the lower realm itself works on itself and elevates itself, so then it will be in a state of zikuch, purification. Right? It'll be elevated and purified. So, milamaila lamata brings about a state of bittul. Milamata lamaila brings about a state of zikuch. Yeah? We're there? We got that? Okay. So now, we said we had to do an introduction in the level, in the union of iskafia and ishafcha. Generally, when we talk about iskafia and ishafcha in Chassidus, and I'm sure most of you learned Basi Lagani. You probably learned Basi Lagani with Rabbi Silberg, right? Before you came here. Right. Yeah. Okay. So in Basi Lagani, in the first ois, Rabbi explained, well, the Cloud, the Mimer talks a lot about it, but in the first ois especially, the Rabbi explains the union of iskafia and ishafcha, two different levels of avodah. And what's iskafia generally? Subduing the Yetzer Hara. What's ishafcha? Transforming the Yetzer Hara. Okay. So now, there's another idea out there. Hamayach sholet al alev, that the brain controls the heart. Now, simply we would say, what's iskafia? Iskafia is, we'll talk about a mitzvah saseh. Iskafia is, I don't have a taiva to do this mitzvah. I'm not interested in doing this mitzvah. I don't have a ratzon to do this mitzvah. Meaning my leiv doesn't want to do the mitzvah. But I overcome that laziness and I do the mitzvah anyway. Okay, so that's called iskafia. So that's not me'er sholet al leiv. My leiv didn't change. My leiv still doesn't want to do the mitzvah. That's a me'er sholet al maisa, that my brain controls my deeds because I did it, even though my leiv wasn't into it. I didn't want to do it. Or the opposite regarding a negative commandment, chas v'shalom. Same thing. A person wants to do an aveira, right? So they overcome themselves and they discipline themselves and they limit themselves, and so they don't do the aveira. Good. The leiv still wants to do the aveira. They just overcame that taiva. Right? So this wasn't me'er sholet al leiv. This wasn't the brain controlling the heart. The heart didn't change at all. This was the brain controlling maisa. Right? Okay. So that's iskafia. That's generally how we understand iskafia. What's ishafcha? Generally, we'll say ishafcha is transforming the nefesh habahamis so that now it wants elokus. So that's taka me'er sholet al leiv. That means the leiv has changed. Right? Now, so to speak, a new leiv, a leiv that wants to do the mitzvah. That's ishafcha. A leiv that doesn't want to do the aveira. Right? Now, ishafcha is generally something in toto. So in todo, I think there's actually a D in that, the way we actually say it. In todo, or todo, I don't know. It's all right. I'm live on YouTube, but I'm making mistakes in English, and it's all right. I'll, probably get a letter from YouTube soon. You have been axed because of your inability to pronounce in todo, whatever it is. Okay? So I thought I'd hedge my bets, but YouTube doesn't go for that. So, I don't even know where I was going now that I got so caught up in toto.
Heart transformation.
Right. So yeah. But the iskafia is that I overcome the desire of my heart to do that which should be done, or not do that which shouldn't be done. That's usually how we relate to iskafia. Ishafcha is I've changed my heart. Now, generally we'll relate that, the complete and total ishafcha is called a tzaddik. If I've completely and totally transformed my nefesh habahamis, so then that's a tzaddik, seder. But that doesn't mean that people can't reach the state of ishafcha. right? There can be a taiva that you had and that bothered you and got in the way of your avodah, and you worked on it, and you no longer have that taiva anymore. It's isavcha. Simple example in Gashmias, a cigarette smoker, 5 years down the road, doesn't want a cigarette anymore. Right? That's isavcha. He used to have a taiva for cigarettes. Now he doesn't have a taiva for cigarettes. It was an addiction at first, okay, but it stopped being an addiction after about 2 weeks. It was still an emotional taiva. He still had an emotional connection to the cigarette. He wasn't physically addicted anymore after about 2 weeks. All right, but he was emotionally addicted. Okay, what does that mean, emotionally addicted? That means that he had a taiva for a cigarette, right? And every time he finished a meal, he would think about sitting down with a cigarette, and he had to say, no, I'm not having a cigarette. So he did a lot of iskafia, right? A lot of iskafia. And it's very impressive if someone can do this iskafia. Stop smoking must be very hard, because most people don't manage, right? Okay, so he did unbelievable iskafia, stopped smoking cigarettes, until after a certain point he finds cigarettes as disgusting as the rest of us do. When a person who smokes cigarettes walks past us, most of us find the smell rather disgusting, right? It's like an ashtray just walked past. Okay, so fine. So that he'll be there in 5 years. He'll have exactly the same reaction as you. 5 years before he was physically addicted and emotionally addicted to this. Okay, fine. Through his kafia, he ultimately reached the level of his hafcha, and he no longer has such a time. Fine. Now, he is more likely to have that taiva than most of us, interestingly enough, right? I think most of us don't have a taiva for a cigarette because we weren't cigarette smokers, right? The cigarette smoker 5 years down the road might still go, well, it's funny, I feel like a cigarette, that's funny. He won't smoke it, but he might still have a taiva, right? Okay, because it was part of his life. But it's still his hafka, because he really doesn't have taivas for it. And it came up, and he just went, that's funny. I wanted a cigarette. What a ridiculous idea! And he laughed, and he went on with his life. It wasn't an avodah. He'd have to sit there and be misbeinain. No. 2 months after, there's no isafcha yet. 2 months later, it's still iskafia. He's still forcing himself not to smoke cigarettes. He still has taivas for cigarettes, right? And that's going to take a while. Right? Yeah, quitting's not hard. I've done it 5 times. There's that line you hear from cigarette smokers. I can quit anytime I want. Right. I can quit anytime I want. Right. Sure. Tell me about it. Okay. Now, but obviously it must be an incredibly difficult thing to kick because people have a hard time. And anybody who does, wow, hats off. Go look at what. It's pashut pikuach nefesh, but it can't be easy. Okay. So that's our normal understanding of Ishafcha and Iskafia. This mimer, the Rabbi is going to be talking about Iskafia and Ishafka in a completely different way, and we're going to see in footnote 26 on the next page where the source of it, which is in Ayin Beis from the Rebbe Shab, that there's also a level of Iskafia that is Meich Sholit Al Alev, meaning that I change my heart. I force Iskafia. Iskafia is kfiyah. I'm forcing it to do something. In this country they call kfiyah datit. Religious coercion, right? The fact that buses aren't allowed to drive on Shabbos in Yerushalayim is religious coercion, right? Okay. The fact that there are non-sneeze pictures all over the bus stops, that's non-religious coercion. But I mean, no one talks about that, right? Okay? Meaning, coercing someone else to act. No one's coercing anybody to act anyway, right? But I mean, it's politically expedient to talk about those sort of things. Okay, but that's called kfiyat, and that's where the word iskafia comes from. I coerce my nefesh habahamis not to do what it wants to do. Okay. There's a higher level. I coerce my nefesh habahamis to change. Meaning, through the milchama of his beinanus, Naran, right? Nefesh Ruach Neshama, encountering the Nefesh Bahamis and bringing about a change in the Nefesh Bahamis. So now the Nefesh Bahamis, it wants to love a Kadosh Baruch Hu, but we're still going to call that Iskafia because it's coming from below above, and it's all a matter of a battle. So the Rebbe is going to call that Iskafia. Even though, what's the difference? Mayach Shalot Al Alev. Now we can say that the brain is controlling the heart. In regular iskafia, we can't say Me'er Shalat Alalev. That's not true. In our usual explanation of iskafia. Our usual explanation of iskafia is my heart wants it and I overcome that desire and don't do it. So that's a Me'er Shalat Alamaisa. That my brain is controlling my deeds, not my heart. My heart's still where he was. He has this taiva. Okay. Me'er Shalat Alalev in that context would be his hafcha. I've changed my heart, and now my heart is no longer connected to this taiva. Now the Rabbi is going to teach us that there's a different level of iskafia and ishafcha. There's iskafia where there is a Me'er Shalat Alalev, where the brain controls the heart, but it's if it comes from below above, meaning I'm, so to speak, battling with my heart, forcing my heart, coercing my heart to change. But it changes. Changes. Right? Okay. As opposed to a revelation from above, which is ishafcha. It's transformed, but it's transformed. In that state, we know it's transformed completely. We're going to see that the change in the nefesh habahamis from below it does bring about a certain change in the nefesh habahamis, but that doesn't mean that the nefesh habahamis has given up fighting. Right? Because if it's iskafia, it's still ready to fight. It just realizes it lost this fight. Right? And that's what we were talking about yesterday in terms of the kategar and the senegar. The prosecutor realizes that he lost this court case, but he's still a prosecutor. Okay, why? Well, because he realized, based on the cogent arguments of the defending attorney, that the truth is with the defending attorney, and he agrees. He's masking. He agrees that that's true. Okay, so that's iskafia, but he's changed relative to this case. He's changed his mind, but that doesn't mean he's changed his being. He's still a kategar. He's still a prosecutor. And we didn't talk about the continuation. We talked about the beginning of this mashal yesterday. What's the continuation of the mashal that's brought in Chassidus? What if the melech walks into the courtroom and demands chanina? The melech walks into the courtroom and demands clemency. He demands a verdict of innocence. So then the kategar is ois kategar. It's not that he's decided in this particular case not to be a prosecutor. There's no prosecutor, because the king came in and the light, the or gadol of the king has been mevatel the prosecutor. There's no prosecutor. The king's light, it emerges victorious. So that'll be a revelation from above, where there's bittul of the below. It's not that the below changed its mind and temporarily agreed. It's bittul. There is no kategor now. There is no prosecutor now. Once the king walks in and decides he's innocent, the prosecutor is no longer a prosecutor. Right? So that's the or gadol from above. That's the mashal of the or gadol above. As opposed to if the king doesn't walk in and he was just convinced by the arguments of the defending lawyer, okay, said he's still a prosecutor. Just happens to be in this particular case, he decided that, you know what, he's right, I'm not. That's very, very different than when the king walks in and demands innocence. There's no prosecutor left. Imagine if the king asked if anybody has anything to say relative to the prosecution of this gentleman. He's not going to open his mouth, he's buckled. Not saying a word. Oh, Your Majesty, I think, you think. It's the end of you. Right. Doc, I was going to bring you my tooth to show you my tooth, but I left it at home.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oig melech a tooth. This is some tooth, man. Shoo. It's about this big.
That big,
Yeah, I had to put a weight in the side of my head so that I wouldn't tip over this side. You know. office with this empty space over there.
I had my tooth pulled out a while ago, and I said to the dentist, could you please put another one in just like the others? So I put a new one in with 3 cavities.
Right. There you go. Okay. So let's start from the beginning of Hay again. Okay, because there's going to be an iskafia that comes from above. Okay? Meaning, Meir Shalat Alalev. I shouldn't say it comes from above. It's going to be Meir Shalat Alalev. We'll see how it all works, how it all plays out.
Rabbi,
Okay? Yeah.
if you say it comes from above, like from Hashem, then once you say that, there's no iskafia at that point, if it comes from above.
Okay, good. I mean, there should be bittul, right? So that's we'll see what that means. When I say it comes from above, doesn't mean there's a revelation of Or Gadol. Let's see what the Rebbe is going to say. It's different than the normal iskafia that we talk about.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about an iskafia where a meir shalit alalev. Okay, let's see. You're right. It's going to be milamata lamayla. I'm sorry. But inyanhu, we read this yesterday. We'll read it again. The besholom shenas al yedei abidur shnei yifanim. There's 2 different levels of shalom that come as a result of bidur, rectification. Shenis batal hamanagid, that it's done away with the managid. These are the few lines we saw before we stopped yesterday. That he reaches a state of bittul. Va'oifen zehu be'ikr. This essentially is b'habidur b'derech milamayla lamata. From above below, the revelation of the light above is mevatel, the reality below. And we've seen that in the context of, I mean, not all of us, but some of us in this room have seen that in the context of, were there to be a revelation of Or Sovev in this world, so that would bring about a bittul of the reality of this world that we appreciate. Meaning, to put that in slightly different terms, were infinite godly light to be revealed in this world, that would be mevatel, finite existence. There would no longer be room, so to speak, for finitude. Why? Well, there's a revelation of infinite, so then there's no finite, because the two can't exist in harmony in a state of revelation. They can exist in the same place, so to speak, but one of them is going to be in a state of revelation, and the other will be in a state of helam, concealment. It's not that there isn't a reality, that there isn't an expression of infinite reality in this world. It's just behelim. And as soon as it comes into a state of revelation, so then it's called finite, by definition. How many numbers between 1 and 1.1? Infinite amount of numbers. As soon as you reveal one of them, it's now a finite number. It's still part of an infinite set. It's now, it was a finite number before. Now it's coming to revelation as a finite number, 1.01. Okay, fine, finite number. It's still part of an infinite set of numbers. But it's state of revelation, so it's finite, right? How many points between these 2 points in space? Infinite amount of points. Fine. That point, okay, I've now designated it as there's infinite amount of finite points in between it. But I've now revealed this one, so it's now a finite point in a revealed state. It's still part of an infinite set, but it's a finite point. How many points in space between my fingers? Infinite amount of points in between my fingers. Okay, whoa, fine. So finite and infinite are constantly dancing in Elam Hazeh. It's not that Elam Hazeh is solely a place of finite reality, but it's solely a place of revealed finite reality. Were infinite reality to be revealed, then the finite reality would be batel. Okay, so that's what the Rebbe is talking about here. Were there to be a revelation milamayla lamata, so then the lamata would be batel. The abirur b'derech milamata lamayla, and the birur from below above, shemavader mislavesh b'mizbader. Right, we've talked about this. This is a review from yesterday. Umisasek imay, he's involved with him. She yirtzel izbader, that he should want to become rectified. Ein zeh, this is not shetachtein, that the lower level of mizbader, that which is rectified, mizbatel, becomes batel. Adarabah, he's sitting right there in the chair. There he is. Elishum mizbader, but he's rectified. Mitzad ratzon shaloi, in terms of his ratzon. Whose ratzon? The ratzon of the mizbader. Right? The student wants to be educated by the teacher. Oh, okay. So the student wants to reach a higher level of reality. That's the ratzon of the student. It's not that the teacher is just is overcoming the existence of the student. Adarabah. He's elevating the existence of the student, but the student has existence. It's the relationship. That's his lapshus. B'keven shegam la'achrish in his butter, and since even after it reaches this state of bitur, hu metzias at the tachton, he's still a reality of tachton. The student didn't become a student, still there, just has a more sophisticated appreciation of reality, whatever that reality happened to be, whatever the teacher was teaching. The tachton ve'elyon mafachim, that the lower realms and the upper realms are opposite states of reality, physical, metaphysical, physical, spiritual. Lochen gam la'achrish in his bar, therefore even after it's been rectified, shayach shi'anagid le'elyon, it's still relevant that it might in future oppose the elyon. Right? The student learned an idea from a teacher. Okay, so he's elevated by virtue of that idea. Might the student disagree with the next idea? Why not? He still has a metzias as relative to the teacher, a tachter. Right? Still different metzias. Okay, he's not bottle. I mean, there are relationships. The relationship of Rebbe Chassid is a relationship of Elyon and Tachten, and that's a relationship of Bittul. So the student has a say in the matter, right? He's elevated by virtue of the Bittul of it all. But he also has to do his own work, milamata lamayla. That's what Lubavitch is all about. That's what Chabad is all about. Let's see. Ubavedas Adam, what's this in Aveda? Shabirer the Nefesh Bahamis, the rectification of the Nefesh Bahamis. Al Yadesh Nefesh Elokis Misalveshes Nefesh Bahamis. By virtue of the fact that Nefesh Elokis is clothed in Nefesh Bahamis, milamata lamayla, right? Naran, be misbeinin on ideas in Elokus that the Nefesh Bahamis can understand. Learn Chassidus, get the Nefesh Bahamis to understand ideas. Who? She's beininus the Nefesh Elokis, the contemplation and meditation of the Nefesh Elokis. He is ba'oifen in a way. Shegam Nefesh Bahamis also. The Nefesh Bahamis Tavin v'tasig can understand and comprehend es inyan Eloki, the godly idea. And we talked about that earlier. That the Nefesh Bahamis, the Nefesh Elokis has to contemplate Elokus in such a way that the Nefesh Bahamis can understand it. And what's that going to mean at first? So first of all, it's going to obviously have to do with Mamale and not Sevev. It's going to have to do with godliness as it's the source of reality in the world in a direct way, as opposed to completely transcendent of the world, because the Nefesh Bahamis can't relate to transcendence at first. It will be able to, but at first it has a hard time relating to that. It's true transcendence. Right? And it also is probably going to have to be about me. It's going to be about the fact that the Eibush is the source of me. Because the Nefesh Bahamis likes me, and I slowly but surely I can educate the Nefesh Bahamis to actually appreciate an idea that has nothing to do with me. But at first, the Nefesh Bahamis is going to make everything me, right? So every story the Nefesh Bahamis here is going to relate to himself. Every idea is going to relate it to himself. That's just the way it works when he's not particularly sophisticated. Okay, so at the beginning, that's how I'm going to have to. What we talked about this earlier, that the meditation, the hisbeinunus will be v'ahavtas v'elokecha ki hu chayecha. It's the source of your life. It's your life. Oh, it's my life. So I like my life. Oh, who's the source of my life? God. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. There'll come a time when a person can appreciate the Eibishter mitzad the Eibishter, not mitzad the fact that the Eibishter is the source of me. Just the Eibishter is the Eibishter. He's just amazing. He's incredible. And so I can get into transcendent reality. Okay, but that might not be the first thing. Right? First thing, I'm probably going to get the person to appreciate the fact that Shabbos is just fun. Shabbos is nicer than Friday night. Shabbos night is nicer than Friday night. Shabbos day is nicer than Saturday. It's just nicer. Okay. Why? Well, because that's what the person's looking for. Where are they coming from? So the first level of hisbeinunus is milamata lamayla, getting the Nefesh Bahamis to appreciate the fact that the Eibishter is worthy of my love, meaning my being the Nefesh Bahamis. Shetavin v'tasik es inyan eloki shemisbeinin be, that he's contemplating. Shall yedei zeh, by virtue of this, tavei lav es Hashem. He'll come to love God. V'ahavta Hashem l'kecha ki hu chayecho. It's the source of your life, source of your chayus. And we saw this in V'yadaita Moskva. That the experience of your own existence is ultimately an experience of the revelation of Shem Havaya. So the source of that experience. So if a person can truly understand and truly appreciate that, and how can he appreciate that? He learns V'yadaita Moskva and he can appreciate it. So then he can appreciate the godliness all around him and in his life, and that's affecting him and giving him everything that he appreciates. The fact that the Nefesh Habahamis loves Hashem, Hagam, even though shebetiva naturally hinim sheches linyonim gashmim, naturally the Nefesh Habahamis is drawn to physical things. You don't have to be misbeinen to appreciate the taste of chocolate pudding. Sit down and learn all about chocolate pudding and how chocolate pudding is good and it has a nice texture and it melts in your mouth, and after you just had a tooth pulled, it's great stuff to eat because you can't chew on anything, so have some chocolate pudding. Oh, how wonderful. Maybe some applesauce too, but chocolate pudding's better than applesauce, most people will say. Right? Not everybody, most people. Right? Why? Because your Nefesh Habahamis is drawn to chocolate pudding. Chocolate is this incredibly powerful taste that most people like. Not everybody, but most. Right? Interestingly enough, the older people get, the more they enjoy the taste of the chocolate and the less they enjoy the taste of the sugar in the chocolate, so they start eating extremely bitter, dark chocolate. Right? So they get 85% chocolate, which most people under 40 can't eat. He's going, this Torah is so bitter. What are you eating this? And the old timers are just, wow, this is really good. Wow. Not that you become forbidden, you don't become bitter. Just sugar loses its appeal. Okay. Let's look at footnote 25. Rei Kuntrus Avoda, Per Gimel. Look in Kuntrus Avoda. Kuntrus Avoda is the Rebbe Shab wrote 4 contrasting for the students. The Rebbe Shab went a lot. He left Lubavitch a lot to go to the spas in the mountains because he was not healthy. So he wrote them. He wrote them contrasting. He wrote Kuntrus Tefillah, right, on Tefillah, obviously. Kuntrus Avoda on his Beinunus, also very connected to Tefillah. Both Tefillah and Avoda are about his Beinunus, contemplation, how to daven. Kuntrus Avoda, Kuntrus Umayan, which is all about dealing with the Nefesh Habahamis, and Kuntrus Eitz Chaim. Kuntrus Eitz Chaim is about learning Pnimis Torah. Right? Why, in addition to learning Eitz Adas, Tev Ra, which is Nigla, right? Knowing the difference between Tev and Ra, learning Halacha, learning Gemara, you also have to learn Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim is Chassidus. Right? And if you learn Eitz Chaim with Eitz Adas, so then Shaykh the Gan Eden. And why did the Eibishter surround Eitz Chaim with these revolving swords? Because once we were kicked out of Gan Eden, so in order to keep us out of Gan Eden, the Eibishter protected Eitz Chaim. If we had eaten from the Eitz Chaim, we would have been in Gan Eden. So what's the Eitz Chaim in Torah? Is Pnimius. We want to get back to Gan Eden, we want to bring Mashiach. So then we learn Pnimius Torah. It's an amazing Kuntrus. So this is from Kuntrus Avoda. Per Gimel. The Ein Zeh Seiser. This doesn't contradict L'Masha Kosa B'Kama Mekem, is that which is written in a number of places, and the Rabbi brings the footnotes. The Koyach HaMis'ava Be'etzem Eino Ra. The Rabbi just said that the nature of the Nefesh Habahamis is that it has a taiva for Inyanim Gashmi. So it says a lot in Chassidus and this, it's an extremely important thing to understand, that Koyach HaMis'ava is not necessarily raw. It's not necessarily evil. There's certain tavot that a person will never lose and can be used for Kedusha, and must be used for Kedusha. The 2 tavot that a person will never lose are the taiva for food, meaning tzaddikim have a different relationship to all of this. They're regular people. Will have a taiva for food. People have a taiva for food. They have a taiva for food. They have to eat. They don't eat, they die. Right? and a taiva for marital relations. Well, that's also rather important because if there aren't any marital relations, then there's no people, right? So that's obviously something that's rather important. So that's a taiva that no one's going to, it's not going to disappear. But it can be controlled and used for kedusha. Well, that's the whole idea when you start talking about marriage. So you'll sit down and learn about the kedusha of marriage, okay, and how we do that in a holy way. But there's still a physical taiva, and the taiva is channeled into kedusha. So too the taiva for eating is channeled into kedusha. You have to eat, right? You're not going to lose your appetite, right? Okay, so the taiva isn't be'etzim ra, ki zeu rak she'ein be'etzir ra be'etzim. That means it doesn't have an essential negative character. Avomiko makam ain't a tov. Still not tov. I mean, it can be channeled to tov, but it itself is not tov. It itself is a physical taiva. It doesn't have to be raw. It doesn't have to be tov. That's why, interesting enough, even those taivas, tzaddikim generally transcended. That doesn't mean they didn't eat. They didn't have children. Not mitzad any taiva. They would eat. They'd have to remind themselves to eat. They didn't eat very much. I mean, even some Chassidim, Rabbi Reichik from LA, all over Shalom. So the Rabbi actually appointed someone, I forget who it was, appointed someone at a certain point to make sure that Rabbi Reichik ate.
Yeah, imagine.
Rabbi told someone, you have to make sure he eats, he doesn't eat. He just couldn't be bothered. He was a very, very skinny person. Very amazing person. I heard a great story from his granddaughter, and I corroborated it with her brother, that once her mother, she was a Reichik. That means her mother was not Rabbi Reichik's daughter, it was Rabbi Reichik's daughter-in-law. So she was driving in the van, everybody has a van, right? Driving in the minivan with a bunch of kids in it, his grandchildren, and saw Rabbi Reichik on the street. So she stopped and he got in the car. She took him home. On the way home, he asked her who she is. It's his daughter-in-law. What's your name? So she said, she was very upset. So she got home, she dropped him off, got home, called up her mother-in-law and said, the shver didn't even know who I was. She said, what are you talking about? I saw him on the side of the street. I picked him up. I took him home. And on the way, he asked me who I am. Mrs. Reichik said, ooh, I'll give it to him. He got in the car with a woman he didn't know. I'll kill him. That's Rabbi Reichik and his wife. They lived in L.A. They were like, L.A. is just the lowest, most gashmistic, disgusting place imaginable. I mean, it really is. I mean, there's a lot of Yiddish guys in LA, but it's just, it's such a disgusting place. It really is. It's just so full of klipa. It's beyond belief. And they live there. When Ronald Reagan saw Rabbi Reichik, he burst into tears. They took Rabbi Reichik to the White House when they went to visit Reagan. And Yudal Thiessen was president, was Education Day USA. The Rebbe's birthday was always Education Day USA, and to this day, the president signs into law that today's Education Day. So Mishlachet always goes into the president, and so when they went into Reagan, so they took Rabbi Reichik is from L.A. and Reagan was a Californian, and Reagan looked at him, and he you can almost look through him because he was sort of only half an Elam Hazeh. And he said, he's from Los Angeles? He said, yes. He said, such a holy man lives in Los Angeles? And he started to cry. He got all choked up. He wiped away tears. He said, I can't believe that such a holy person could live in Los Angeles. How could it not affect him? I mean, Reagan knew what Los Angeles was, right? Rabbi Reichik was really amazing. He was just an amazing guy. But the Rabbi had to get someone to tell him to eat. The opposite is true. Au contraire, right? A contrario. But tiva nimshach linyanim chumrim. The teva of the nefesh habahamis, if it's not educated and elevated and illuminated, will be interested solely in basic physical needs. And even if it might be a little more adel and it might be somewhat more sophisticated and be interested in certain intellectual things, so those intellectual things will all be self-serving. Because that's just the nature of the nefesh habahamis, right? And even the person who's into the intellect will still be into the gashmias also. Right? Meaning it might be while they're discussing their deep philosophical ideas, they're busy drinking their cup of coffee and smoking their cigarette. Or eating their sushi, or whatever it happens to be. Right? So let's just finish this sentence. Hagam shebetiva yinimshach zinyanim gashmim hu lo yal yedei shenisbatel l'metzias shelo. The fact that the nefesh habahamis now loves the Kadosh Baruch Hu is not because it's batel, ella, but adarabba, the opposite is true. Al yedei shaseichel the nefesh habahamis, the intellect of the nefesh habahamis itself, ba'al avona, has come to a state of understanding. Shetzarich le'avis Hashem, they have to love God. That's islavshus. That's going to be called iskafia, not ishafcha. Because I'm battling the nefesh habahamis. Even though it's been, so to speak, transformed, but it's still iskafia. Because it hasn't changed, it still is what it is. It just has come to a different conclusion. Look at footnote 26, then we'll stop. Re'ehem shechtaf ayin reish beis, ayin beis, and Rebbe Shab, Chela Gimel, Almud, Aleph Shin Chavbet, that means page 1322, rather long set of Maimarim. Even though Shezeu b'derech milchama, even though this is a war, right, because it's all through his beinus. Nefesh habahamis loichem neged nefesh elokis, that nefesh habahamis is fighting the nefesh elokis to get it to appreciate elokus. Mikom mokem, nevertheless, oifen a bittul shalei, the bittul of the nefesh habahamis, hu al yedei shegam hu mevin, it's inyan eloki, comes as a result of the fact that gam he, the nefesh habahamis, understands this godly idea. Oh, now the Rabbi uses the word that we've been waiting for, and we said we're going to see this word. V'gam hu maskim, he agrees with ala bittul the nefesh elokis. The nefesh habahamis agrees that nefesh elokis knows what's true. Now, that doesn't mean nefesh habahamis doesn't have a taiva for French toast with cinnamon. It still has a taiva for that, but it's maskim that the nefesh elokis is more real than it. But it still is what it is. Shegam hu nisar b'ava, that also the nefesh habahamis is aroused in love. Ulahar, to explain, the Rebbe says. Now that's the end of the quote of the Rebbe Shab. Now the Rebbe is explaining it. The gam shemavar sham, that even though he's explaining there the Rebbe Shab, hamayla, the advantage bahabir b'derech islavshus, and we're going to see that the advantage of the bitter that comes through islavshus encountering the nefesh habahamis, because the nefesh habahamis is going to change more than it does by virtue of the revelation from above, because that's just mavatalit, but then it can be chayzav in the air, it can come back. Maskim al habitul the nefesh elokis. Those are the words of the Rebbe Shab. Nefesh habahamis agrees with the bittul and nefesh elokis. Hainu she'ein ze mitzad nefesh habahamis atzma. This isn't coming from the nefesh habahamis itself. Elo mitzad nefesh elokis. It's coming from the nefesh elokis. Hamislaveshes ba. It's not that the nefesh habahamis has completely been transformed. The nefesh habahamis is simply allowing itself to be a kli for the expression of the nefesh elokis. So that's his kafir. It's not his hafchol. It hasn't been transformed. It's still the nefesh habahamis. It's just allowing itself, it's masking to the view of the nefesh elokis. So that's like the kateg, or agreeing with the senegel. He agrees with him. Okay, you're right. But he's still a kateger. He's still a prosecutor. But gamazu rak ba'ofen shel haskama. Then it's still only agreeing. It's not that he's been transformed. Okay, we'll stop there and we'll pick up tomorrow.
Rabbi,
Yeah. Oh, you're not here tomorrow.
well, I'll pick it up on.
Listening.